females younger than me would have been ashamed to even tell their friends about this stuff, because in most cultures, for some odd reason, we like to shame girls for being girls. This type of harassment also made me very aware of how I approach people. No matter how fun I think my vibe is, I can clearly see when someone isn't laughing. That's definitely not the time to insist everyone be the life of the party. So I'm sorry, but why do people insist on sounding so ignorant? It's not a secret. You're openly and willingly being ignorant out loud at that point. So yes, it's a problem. Please have the sense to take notice of these things if you haven't. Nobody's life ever goes perfect, and it's really strange how the same things we blurt out without thinking always seems to be the same situations we end up getting ourselves into. So let's be nicer to ourselves and think without speaking first. It just so happened I was lucky enough to have a decent amount of personal battles with these types in the past that I had spent enough time preparing myself to be able to handle these types of miserable people if I had to again. Yes, ironically, I'm also grateful. My haters happen to be ignorant as fuck, so most likely it's not such a coincidence. But okay. For those of us that can relate, you know that means also making sure that I never fall into the temptations of miserable people. Oh my god, I'm so tired. Having no goals at all. These types of people sit around waiting for someone to lose track of their money. They worship money every day. They betray their best friends for money. They have the nerve to call you the problem for earning so much money and being the cop caller when you're tired of having to defend yourself for doing nothing wrong. From the same cop callers that would make a report over a paper cut if it was the other way around, but they feel so confident in their little groups that they're like, oh, no one's gonna fuck with me. It's like a defining characteristic though of like these gangs in Central Valley. That's all I can speak of because it's all I know from experience. But I met one bulldog that like I had so much motherfucking respect for, but that's a different story. It's a whole story. But in short, he actually represented the things that they say that any gang says that they represent, right? And so he, defended me when my friends were being assholes, basically, to me. And he's like, hey, like immediately, he didn't wait 5 minutes. He came straight to me. He's like, hey, this guy just pulled me outside and told me, do I want to help them set you up? And he told me this because I'm these people's ride, and they're sitting there just chilling, like, oh, fake as fuck, plotting on me, who have never in my life stolen anything from them, talked down on them. Like, there's no motherfucking reason. They just chose me because they thought, hey, here's an easy target. Isn't it funny how that shit works out? Anyways, but yeah, every other gang member, quote unquote gang member that I've met, like, they're probably not even real gang members. Like, they're talking a lot of shit because they're not about it, honey. They're not about it. They're not about the good or the bad. They're just like sitting there like blah, blah, blah. They talk all fucking day. It's a whole bunch of shit. And then they have the nerve to call you a shit talker. They've gone mad. Anyway, more than a third of the world by now has suffered some type of domestic violence. Yet these types of people, these, fake gangs, still find it appropriate to say these types of things out loud, all while giving you side eye. Like, they really think they're cool. I know you're ancient, bro. I mean, if I didn't know any better, you might have me fooled. But I know you know. Despite the fact that I was gracious enough to still bite my tongue for years in an effort to keep this peace, quote unquote, okay? It's some form of peace, right? As I imagine anyone in the right mind would do this. I was still a target for the ignorant, which of course is a relatively good problem to have versus being targeted by intelligent people. What's probable is people tend to be triggered by two things, and that's truth and traumas. So let's be careful not to confuse ourselves. What I mean is, if what I'm saying is true and someone doesn't like it, the natural response would be to take as much of it constructively as possible, and then be the change, right? So why bother calling anyone out at that point? The truth's already going to make them look stupid. I don't need to. And I'm conserving energy. Of course. Besides, the rule is if you already mentioned it, if you've even taken the time to validate someone's hypocrisy, and they made a conscious decision to prioritize their lack of effort, once again, over us, the affected friend, I'm perfect. All parties agree to disagree. No secret ninja stars have been thrown here, and everyone can get on with their day, knowing that whatever will be said is no longer for or about them. And that's why it's called forever hold your peace. Not hold your peace and then act like you don't hear me because you think anyone's gonna care what you have to say about it later. It's all fun and cute little jokes and games, and wow, you're so petty to even mention it. But take the time to call them out publicly, and all of a sudden, you're the whole blood-sucking clan's #1 threat. Oh my god. Gasp, friends. And I get it, but I don't get it more than I get it. So people call me dumb, or some variation of it all the time. And you can imagine how it would look if I was offended by it. So, like, we don't have time, friends. We only have time for truths, to live by them, and for traumas, to set them straight. The rest is useless. And the compounding effect of words, habits, and situations will probably be the one of our biggest regrets if we let it distract us from loving ourselves, having better boundaries, goal weights, new friends with better morals, or at least funnier friends. How do we get there if we just spent 3 hours arguing with ignorant people? We don't have time. We could have been arguing with business owners, explaining why we deserve 20% more than the ignorant investors. What we're essentially saying is that that person's inaccurate opinion of me is more important to me than getting enough sleep, spending enough time with my kids, having enough boundaries, making enough money, meeting people cooler than them. We know that's what we're saying. And that's why we hesitate to engage in bullshit when we sense we're going to be held accountable, hence certain people are around, right? So there's the culprit. That's the problem with the wrong friends. The wrong friends will let us do this. They won't even acknowledge it's happening, and pretty often encourage it because we're like fun, amusing little puppets to them now, right? And I mean, friend is the wrong word, obviously. And we're back to my favorite part. If you've already mentioned it, they make a conscious choice to prioritize their lack of effort once again over the affected person. Then all parties agree to disagree, and it's perfect. Got her.